Call the Town of Leeds Planning Commission for Wednesday, May 1st, to order at 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and start with roll call. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock.
Bill Lytle.
Danielle Sterling.
Ron Nelson.
Pete Origema.
All right, we'll go ahead and have Bill give us our pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any declaration of abstentions or conflicts? At this point, I have I am part of a trust for the agricultural protection area that's on an action item.
I have none.
I have none.
Okay, tonight for consent agenda, we have tonight's agenda and also meeting minutes from April 17th. I am looking for a motion to approve our consent agenda and the meeting minutes from April 17th.
I'll motion to approve.
Excuse me just a minute. On the minutes, I've got a question, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
On 9B, let's see, sign regulation amendments were approved after modifying section 222.2.3 to reflect current business license required for a local business on commercial property to install a 35-foot pole sign. Now, the business, the local business would already have a business license. Now, maybe it's just, I'm reading this wrong. Do they need another permit or anything to install that 35-foot pole line? I'm trying to remember back on the meeting, or that pole sign. Because the current business license is required for a local business on commercial property and to install.
Well, it would be called a local business with a license.
Right.
So that's the way, that was the intent.
Okay. But then on the commercial property and to install a 35 or to,
That's what the notes said, that's what the audio said.
is that what we,
So in other words, it requires the business, a business license.
well, that would be required anyway.
We were being specific, because you didn't want to have out-of-towners.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah, okay. Yeah, for the local business on commercial property. Yeah, okay.
So to have a pole sign, you have to have a business license on that property.
You have to have
On that, yeah.
a Leeds business.
Leeds business.
Leeds. Okay. I'm good.
All right, so I'm still looking for a motion for,
I motion to approve the minutes from April 17th and tonight's consent agenda.
Second motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, our announcements are planning commission openings and updates. We still have openings if anyone's available and willing to do that. Now we'll go ahead and start on number 7, our public hearings. We'll open up our public hearing for chapter 23 of the land use ordinance mixed use zone development. And we will, unless there's any discussion from the planning commission, we'll go ahead and open that up to the general public.
I wasn't here, but I just got one question.
Okay.
In the recommendations, it says 80 acres could be adequate to establish a mixed-use project. And down here in red, it's got parcel size must exceed 40 buildable acres. So is it 80 acres is still the minimum?
Well, no,
No.
this is his recommendation.
Right.
Yeah, this is
But
just.
what we had decided is 40 buildable, so maybe they'll have like, let's say they'll have 100 acres, but if we,
They've got to have 40.
they have to have 40 buildable acres. So someone can't come in with all hillside ordinance, with like, let's say 300 acres and say, well, I want it all mixed use, and then have everything on 1 acre.
Okay, yeah.
So it has to have minimum of 40
That's your.
buildable acres.
And Bill, the last two paragraphs,
Uh-huh.
you will see on.
Yeah, I think those were stricken off.
Okay. Like, you know, we were
Right,
gonna
so-
eliminate those.
Yeah, I read through those, as I can see.
You agree with it?
I agree, I do. Oh,
Well,
well, mine is.
Yeah, I-
I guess you don't have to, you can do, you can make your.
The microphone?
So I'm-
Microphone's not
If we
on.
do it, if we do
That's
an
an
action,
action.
if we have it as an action.
Microphone?
Microphones aren't on.
Oh, you're right.
That was Bill's recommendation. Bob. I'm sorry, Bob Nicholson, yeah, Bob,
On the 40?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know the next number, more recently, I think we thought about 80, but 40 were, well,
The reason I was thinking of 40, you know, I was just thinking of the amount of money that it would take to purchase 40 acres.
Yeah.
If you're buying, if you're paying $100,000 an acre, I mean, that's $4 million. So you're gonna have to have quite a bit of money unless somebody's giving the land away.
yeah, oh, that's 40's fine.
Well, and that makes it where somebody's not gonna put it on a 5 acre
Right,
corner somewhere.
Right, that's what, yeah, that's what Bill recommended. I mean, that's what, you know, yeah, what he said, you know, to make it too small,
Right,
you know, build a house on an acre of land and have, you know,
the post office.
yeah.
The service station.
Sure.
It's up upstairs, so.
Okay.
You're on.
All right, so is there anyone from the public that would like to come and have any comment about our public hearing, chapter 23 of the land use ordinance? I did. I opened the public hearing. Do I have a motion to open this? We don't, I just can open it. Okay. Any other discussion?
Can I, on section 23.8, talks about commercial establishment size limits. So that's on page 3. It's at 23.8. Right now, the ordinance limits the commercial establishment to 2,000 square feet. That is very small.
I thought we changed that to 10.
Well, the planning commission did recommend that, but that's never gone anywhere. I mean, that hasn't gone to the town council for action, so since it's being reconsidered, I'd suggest something in the neighborhood of
We,
10,000.
you were in Boston. We talked about that, and Danielle, you wanna fill in
Yeah,
on our thinking?
What we decided is, if you look at, well, let's take Grapevine, for example, if you look at what their master plan is, it's very similar to what's in like San Francisco. I went there a couple months ago, and everything has, their basement, or the ground level was very, very small shops, and upstairs was more or less all of their living. And so I don't believe that they wanted like a Kmart with,
Right.
housing
Within
above
that-
it.
within
And
that
so
boundary.
I think what this mixed use is trying to do is very small shops, like maybe one bakery, one, you know what I mean? It's not, I don't think it was ever intended for mixed use to exceed that 2,000 square feet for commercial limits, because I believe what the mixed use zone is for is creating a walkable environment for these people that live there, but not necessarily to have a ginormous commercial building that monopolizes everything that you're doing. And I think that's why
That would
it's,
take out all your small shops if it was.
Right.
And I agree, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm saying it's 2,000 square feet is gonna eliminate a lot of the little corner, the corner pharmacies like a Rite Aid or a Walgreens or a
And I think that's what their
CVS.
intention was.
You know, these are really small. If that's the vision, to have very, very small, that really limits the viable, the number of shops that can really go
No,
into
but
that.
the other thing too is that doesn't say that they can't be in a commercial district. This just says that it can't be in mixed use. And so you can always have your commercial zone, and
Right.
mixed use is more or less, I believe, in this aspect, the property is more for small, walkable, at least what I've read in mixed use and the pictures that I've seen and the visuals, they don't have ginormous commercial property. That's outside of the mixed use zone. So I think
Yeah.
at
Well,
this point, we should keep the 2,000 just because if you extend it to 10,000, you'd have your Rite Aids in the middle of blocking out all of the little guys that want the 2,000 square feet. And
2,000 is a very limiting number in there for, you don't see them very often anymore.
well, like all down, in fact, I was on Main Street in St. George yesterday, and most of those little shops down there are not any more than 2,000 square feet. The,
Most of them give that range.
yeah, they're, the little cupcake place, 52 Main, something like that. I know what it is. I know the address, but I don't know the name. So, I think the primary basis of the mixed use zone should be keep it very small and keep your commercial
So
out.
maybe bring up Grapevine, but like, all their place would not be mixed use, right? So
Right.
part of the property, they could have some of it as zoned as commercial, so if they wanted to bring in a service station or a Walmart, there'd be room for it somewhere.
Or a hotel.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we, we spoke about that, because I brought that up, increasing the size. And, during our conversation, I was talked out of it. Because, they can designate land for commercial and put a hotel, or put in, like you said, a Walmart or a Costco.
Or Rite Aid or
Right
something.
now.
Yeah, or Rite Aid or whatever.
Because if you think about even downtown St. George, could you imagine like a Rite Aid right in the middle of that mixed use zone where they have all that little tiny thing? I think
Yeah,
Mixed
there used to be an idea right there.
it's fine.
It is,
It's the little
because the
ones
big
go back.
stores,
Yeah.
and the big stores
Yeah.
down there, not Steamroller.
Yeah, it's gone
That's
too.
where
It's gone.
Yeah, steamrollers and stuff, but there's one on the other end.
Yeah.
Up River below well, no, there's one below the Laser.
Right, right. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just to the public hearing time.
Yeah.
Just a question on 23.8. If you consider St. George Boulevard there at Main, where Urban Renewal and Little Professor Bookstore is, those probably consist of about 4 or 5 different buildings. But in building a new one, and, they might, if it was all one building, that they were all actually in. Is this considered that there could be like 5 in this, if that was all one building, because they're separate establishments?
That's what I'm
Or,
looking
I
at.
mean,
There
so
could
like a
be
strip
as
mall.
many as they want to put in.
So not like a strip mall.
That's,
You could-
Right.
that's the mistake
Okay.
I was making when I saw that.
Okay, just wanted
So
to,
they can put in, 1,000 of them.
But they're very small mixed-use zoning so that you don't, I think the intent of this mixed-use zone is to create it so that there's a lot there in a little walking space. And if you create a 10,000 square foot building and you put 5 of those, it's not gonna be that mixed-use zone. So that's kind of what I read it at, but if you'd like to hear anything.
yeah, no, I just wanted to check to make sure that they couldn't have, adjoining walls and ceilings, roofs and everything, with multiple different establishments. They got, like in Tabernacle, there's a number of stores, they're near the old theater, and, they're about, 20 feet wide and 100 feet long, which is, 2,000 square feet. So,
But they're all in one building, or 2 or 3 of them.
2 or 3 of them,
Right.
yeah. So I just want to make sure,
Angela,
whatever.
when this goes to the town council,
Mhm.
You get to review it and do whatever you feel is necessary with it.
I know I
Okay,
can, I just
so-
thought, at this level, I wanted to clarify my thinking since I'm already
Okay.
here.
Yeah, no,
I
we appreciate it.
apologize.
It's okay. All right. Oh,
Are you officially in a public meeting
Public hearing.
or a public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah. Normally you would do it by a motion, so you said that. My name's Alan Roberts. I do have a couple of issues with the language change and the addition. I'm not sure, to me, when you throw out 40 buildable, number one is the 40, to me is just an arbitrary number. When you use the word buildable, I very much disagree with any zoning tying to buildable acreage, like any of our other zones that exist, whether it's R1, RR1, R2, R5. There isn't any of those zones that designate it has to be 5 acres of buildable property. It's not that way. I think it's wrong to write your ordinance for a land use on buildable. Property owners, if they own a certain amount of acreage, whatever they decide to do with it, if they decide to do anything with it, that's when you start saying, okay, here's other things that fall into place, whether it's hillside ordinances, whether there's something extraordinary on the property that doesn't allow for a portion of it to be built on, whether it's drainage issues or whatever. So I have issues with the buildable word, and I have issues with the 40 acres. The first mixed use that came into Leeds was a Mike North annexation, and it is approximately 5 acres. I'm not sure what the magic number is. I know the intent is not to deal with someone who has an acre and says, I'd like to do mixed use on that. But I don't know what the magic number is. I'm not in favor of removing the last 2 sections on height changes. I think that's something that should be left open for future. If someone can show just reason for that type of a modification, let them deal with that at the time that they want to present their justification for that. Street designs, I can tell you that there are very few roads in Leeds that meet Leeds standards right now for street design. I am very much in favor of a mixed use, allowing that to also be presented at the time that someone is proposing some type of a development on mixed use. If it makes sense in an area, you should do it. If it doesn't make sense, you shouldn't do it. And that's going to really depend on where the property is and the dynamics that surround it. That's my opinion.
Now that you brought that up, Alan, I'm just kind of wondering, the little store, or that little storefront right on the sidewalk up there, just this side of Center Street.
Lance Bars.
There used to be a little antique shop. And then before that, years ago, I guess was a store. If we had not had this, I doubt if they could have ever done anything. You know, put a store in there. And that was a historic building as far as we're concerned, you know, in Leeds. It's been there for.
It was a gas station originally.
Was it a gas station
It
originally?
was originally a gas station. I have pictures of my
Yeah.
father-in-law.
Because it said, that, could be modified to meet,
Mixed use.
no, I'm just kind of curious if with the way it is, if this was eliminated, they'd never been able to put that little shop in there.
turn an acre. That's not.
Because if
that's-
you can redo the setback
that's-
and that.
But that's a residential lot. And that was a non-conforming use,
Yeah.
putting that in. And that's not zone mixed use.
We're only looking at.
And the reason do you know why they closed it?
Oh, that shop? No, that in the business.
No, they closed it because their insurance company gave them a quote on what it's gonna cost them to have insurance for that little shop. And it was unbelievable. So that's why it closed so quickly.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
I didn't know that.
And I think the
It
whole
was an
point,
insurance issue.
the whole point of taking this out is this opens it up that anyone can come in and not have Leeds standards. That they don't have to have the standards of what we already have in our ordinances, they can change them. But then we almost have, everyone else that doesn't have mixed use has to be by our ordinances, by our standards. But anytime we have a mixed use zone, they don't have to.
That's not a true statement, Danielle.
They can come and, excuse me, but please don't shout from, or I will ask you to leave. Anyway, it says any height, size, and setback limitations required may be modified. So in modifying them, it gives people from mixed use zone the opportunity to modify, whereas residential or commercial or anything like that won't have that same ability to do that.
Now, you know, I'm really not the smartest company on the block here. Can't anybody come in to change any?
They can ask, anybody can come in and ask
Right.
for a review and a change
If
of any
I want to
ordinance.
put an 8-foot fence in my front yard and I want to have
Right.
a 4-foot, I can come in and say, can I do this? This is the reason why.
Right.
Right,
And we can say it's not in our ordinances, and you can ask for a review of that ordinance
right.
at that time.
So really, taking this out or leaving it in doesn't,
It doesn't really matter, but it gives us the opportunity as a planning commission to say, because it's not in our ordinances, you'll have to go through the proper steps to do that.
well, they'd have to anyway.
Right,
Well, there's a difference, you know, one is amending an ordinance is a 2-month process typically, because you have public hearings before the planning commission, city council, town council. As opposed to, the way it's written now, it's more flexible, and come in and, you know, and if the town council feels there's justification, then it can be granted. So, one, amending the code is a much more rigorous and burdensome process than just, you know, the way it's written now, is you come in and ask for special consideration. Does that make sense?
So basically what we're doing is we're making it harder for the mixed zone use people to make changes.
Yes.
it goes through more steps so that everyone has the ability to really know what's going on. They have to have, just like what we're doing, they have to have a public hearing so that everyone understands exactly the differences and changes that they're asking to.
So if I wanted to change
modify.
if I wanted to put a 8-foot fence in my front yard, I'd have to have a public hearing.
Well, not
Well,
necessarily,
you
this is
change the
for,
ordinance.
this is for mixed use.
Well, I know, but you're saying it's different for me as a person than it is for mixed use people. I just want to know this.
Right, it's a good thing
Mel, when I brought this up a year and a half to 2 years ago, this is one of the things that I wanted changed, and I was a private citizen at the time. And through luck of the draw, it's been a year and a half to 2 years, and now I'm sitting up here, and in my opinion, 2310 and 2311 just give more rights to a few people in town than anyone else. So in other words, a developer can't come in here, and Rick Sant can't come in here and say, I'd like these standards, I'd like these same standards, I'd like these changes, I'd like these same rights that mixed use has. And he can't do that. He would have to go through this process of changing his development agreement and the ordinances to be able to do that. And what we're saying is, what I'm saying is, why give more rights to some people and less rights to everyone else? And I'm a firm believer in, what's fair for one is fair for all. That's the reason, that's the reason I think this is just, I think the last two paragraphs are just ridiculous. But we're still in a public hearing,
Right.
so if there's anyone,
Yes, there's someone that wanted to speak and was waiting up there.
No, I was just going to remind you, you are in a public hearing. That's when the public has the opportunity to speak. If you close the public hearing, have all the dialogue you want amongst yourselves.
you're right, you're
Yes.
right, Alan.
I just have a mild question. I'm not smart enough for the others. On 23.4, 2F, it mentions Leeds sense of place, it's capitalized, so I wondered is that a document?
Where is it that you're looking?
2F on page 4. Diverse and distinctive design features that are in harmony with Leeds sense of place. Leeds sense of place looks like the title of something. Is that a document that has been established and
Right.
we should be able to review, or we've had input or something?
I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, I think she has a good point. It's the way sounds like it's an official document, where I don't think it is. It's probably just referring to Leeds' character or Leeds' sense of place. So I think those would all be, Leeds would be sense of place would be small, cap or small, because you could insert that are in harmony with Leeds' character, you could do the same meaning.
And I'd like to apologize to the public. I'm very new to this. I'm learning just as well as I possibly can, so please be patient with me because I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm trying to serve as best I can. So if there is any other public comment, we would take that, or if you'd like to. All right, then I'll have a motion to close the public meeting.
I motion to close the public meeting.
Close public hearing.
Public hearing.
Thank you.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now I'd like to have a motion to open the master road plan public hearing.
I motion to open up the public hearing.
So, let me, before we open that, so did we do anything with this?
We-
We didn't vote on whether it was good or bad,
We'll
right?
go down to the action items
Okay.
on number 8 when we get to do that.
They're listed separately.
All right, so I have a motion on the table to open the master road fund public hearing. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right. Is there any public comments on the public hearing for master road plan?
Well, can I make a comment, Ralph?
Yes?
Under the state code, which is called the Land Use Development Management Act, it's Title 10, Section 9A, there's two requirements for all cities and towns in the general plan. There's two requirements. One is to have a land use plan, land use element, and the second is to have what they call a transportation and traffic circulation plan, which is the master road plan. Those are, so you can, there's broad discretion on what that plan is, but you can't eliminate it. Okay? Each town has to have some kind of road circulation plan.
Can we create a transportation plan versus a master road plan? Because I've seen it in both ways.
Well,
I've seen,
Yeah, a transportation plan is often referred to as a little more comprehensive. It includes mass transit, bus routes, bike lanes, all that, where a road plan is strictly about what it is, a road plan. So, you know, for Leeds, a road plan is really all you're looking at. It may include bike lanes, so you can call it a transportation plan, but you're not probably, mass transit's not in the future for some time, probably, so. Anyway, the state law, there's a little more language. Well, let me just read maybe briefly what the transportation. Let's see, it says, at a minimum, the proposed general plan with the accompanying maps, charts, and descriptive and explanatory matter shall include the planning commission's recommendations for the following plan elements. 1, a land use element that. 2, a transportation and traffic circulation element consisting of the general location and extent of existing and proposed freeways, arterial and collector streets, mass transit, and any other modes of transportation that the planning commission considers appropriate, all correlated with the population projections and the proposed land use element of the general plan. So those are the 2 required elements. You know, obviously you can go well beyond that. You can have a historic preservation, you can have parks and recreation, you can have a geologic sensitive areas, which a lot of towns have, but there are 2 required elements. And so, you know, you can modify, you can scale back. That one option is not to say we're not going to have one.
We're in the public hearing.
We're still in public hearing, so we can't say. Yes. Yeah, that would be great. Yes, yes. We're moving.
Susan Savage from 905 North Wonderland. We have, I don't have a map here to show you what I'm talking about, but I have some comments about our property. Is that appropriate for right now?
Yeah, and I have a map if you'd like.
Should we, if everybody see it, or we put it on the board?
I think she.
Actually, Bob, it's posted on the board, the green board back there, I think, isn't it?
What's that?
Oh, it's posted back there, but it's too small to see unless you're standing right in front of it.
Okay.
Oh, let me see where this is. How much more of that? We have this property right here that is not within the city limits. On the maps that I saw before with proposed roads for the master plan, there's a road going out through this property to connect to here and to provide a connector to these properties right here. And also a road coming out through okay, this is city limits and this is outside, is that right? Coming out through here, that dead ends. I think this is what maybe you and I looked at before. And I went down to Sunrise Avenue.
I apologize, that was
Well, I should have brought my maps too. Anyway, what I have said, what we have talked about, I expressed, and also a couple of times with Sunrise Engineering, is that if this road out here, and I think that was maybe arbitrarily drawn along this little farming road that we use to access our field out there, and we don't have people in our family who are inclined at this point. I know we don't know in the future, but we're not inclined to develop. But should it be developed, anyway, we understand that we would have to provide connections, right, in either one of these places. So I'm just wondering if that can't be in the language somehow. That if these areas are developed, that the developers would provide a collector, a connection road or something, because without doing that, we have no idea what we might do or what would be an advantage to us and how to connect to other people. And so, you know, although people have said to me that can be modified later on, the understanding I have is not very much. It couldn't be modified very much. So for instance, up here, this road that would connect up into this part of El Dorado Hills and out into this part, what we ask is that instead of the road being drawn across our property, it go on their side of the property, if it's for their advantage, and it can connect up here and provide the same kind of connections, but, and could be drawn for the people who need it, rather than for people who don't want it there and don't have a need for it. And this piece out here, what we would like is, I try to decide why the line had been drawn. It must have been drawn along, along annexation lines or something like that. I don't know. There's nothing out there to suggest why the road was put in on that master plan the way it was, but there's no, I mean, you can always draw lines on the paper that say, well, we can connect right here, but the terrain isn't conducive to that. And the drainage and all of that is difficult, it's a difficult area. So what we would like is to have some language saying that we would provide something, because we have no idea. And the problem that we've run into up here is that people, 2 or 3 times over the years that wanted to develop on top of the hill have claimed any low line out there, we just had to fight it. And there really aren't any lines, they've said that little dirt road down through there is a county road, and we went to the county, it's not a county road, and so on. So we would like to have that left open with, if there is some kind of language saying that if we did develop it, we would provide a collector road, but not to plan it in, because it might go somewhere that's, that's really difficult for us to deal with, or that might be, constantly pushed at us by somebody else who can see it as an advantage to them when, we didn't provide a connection for the people on top of the hill, because it would have totally defined what we could do with our own property, which is, we wouldn't have had the freedom to decide anything else, because it would have been a major thing that we couldn't have done what we're more inclined to want to do. Does that all make sense? So, okay, this piece up here, we'd like to see that road go, instead of through our property, on the side of the line for the properties that it's being designed for, and down here to have it left open until we do something. Because it does dead end, it doesn't connect with anything else down in there to provide a through street.
I believe that was the intent, to get rid of the, get rid of the road plan as such, because some of the lines, some a developer could come in and claim that that's it, it's
Let me
made
stop
in
you for a
stone.
second, just for a minute. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Okay, I'm sorry.
And I'll go ahead and, after he speaks, then I'll close it, and then we can talk. We can
Oh, okay,
discuss it.
I'm sorry.
We're all learning, it's okay, but keep your thoughts, we'll just make sure.
Yeah, and I think it's appropriate, you can have a discussion, I think, while the public hearing.
You can speak to.
Okay.
You can speak to citizens.
All right, I'm gonna just
No,
talk to you, no, you
it's fine.
keep there, I'm gonna talk to you, you go ahead and continue on. If he says it's okay, then it's okay.
The public, obviously, the public hearing is a time for the public to come forward, and at some point you cut that off. But
Okay.
in the meantime, if there's dialogue, I don't see any harm in that.
Okay.
That's-
Thank you, I appreciate that, continue.
I believe that was part of the reasoning behind abandoning the road plan, was because of these lines that were just arbitrarily drawn, that someone could come in and say, well, that's the way it is, that's your road plan, that's what we want. And that's what you don't want, In other words, if they came in and they wanted to do a development in an area around a road plan, that wouldn't be, there wouldn't be a road plan there. They would have to negotiate their own roads at that time. And that was, I believe, the reasoning of abandoning the road plan.
One other aspect too is that when I asked Sunrise Engineering to start over, I said, all I want you to do is create an existing road plan. And I don't know if you could, if you come to the last little bit, what I did is I went to the town, or the recorder's office, and I asked for all the dedicated roads, the numbers, because they all have dedicated numbers on the plat maps. Well, we only have 9 dedicated roads in this town, and I talked with Mr. Whitehead from the town, and he's, the Washington County, he's currently looking through to see which roads are actually dedicated and which ones are only right-of-ways. And my intent with this was that if we could get our existing road plan and start there, and adopt that as maybe our master road plan. It had gone back and forth through the council, or the commission, to say, you know, let's just abandon the whole thing. If we don't need it, we don't need it. But if we have to have a master road plan, I'm almost thinking at this point that we take the existing road map, create that our master road plan, and have some type of verbiage to say anything is going to be, anything else that someone's going to come and actually create their own, help me with the verbiage
Well,
on this, like
I think what you're trying to say is what you refer to as a letter saying that they will
Right.
provide it when they develop. You're already, that exists, that's called the subdivision ordinance. When you subdivide your property, you're required to put in roads. And so you really, that's taken care of, and that's why most master road plans are designed, just like the state law said, are for the major roads. The freeway, arterial, and collectors. A little neighborhood subdivision street, yeah, you wait until somebody develops. But there's some wisdom in trying to lay out those major arterials, because a lot of times you don't have a lot of choices. You know, you've got hills and gaps and little places where, you know, where you can put those major roads. The little, you know, the local subdivision street, usually there's, you know, people can wait until they're ready to develop their property. So, you know, I think that's the wisdom in the master road plan, is laying out the major streets, not the little minor access roads to subdivisions.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I think the majority of the major roads are going across people's lands that would like to negotiate themselves instead of the town doing that for
Yeah,
them.
but I think the majority of those are probably not major roads, they're more just your subdivision, your local access streets.
So you don't necessarily have to have those on at all?
You don't have to, some towns have them and some don't. St. George, there's a few shown where it's absolutely clear where they go, but if it's not clear, then we just leave them off and we usually handle it at the time of subdivision. That comes in.
Susan, we're extremely uncomfortable drawing lines on a map over private property. And we don't believe we have the right to do that, at least a few of us. I can't speak for everyone. But, so, you know, our first opinion was to eliminate the master road plan, but from what Bill said, Bob. I'm sorry, Bill, Bob,
They've all started.
forgive me. What was I? We don't want to have the potential hardship. In other words, we draw a line on a map, and some developer comes in and wants to build a subdivision at the end of that road, and wants to, you know, comes and says, you know, well, you know, we want eminent domain to get to our property, and that's going to improve the tax base for our town, and we're uncomfortable doing that. So we don't want to put any lines across your property, or anyone else's, for that matter, to do that. So, you know, we're gonna proceed, but just so you're aware of where we're coming from. If you want to develop your property, then you can come to the town with a design and go through the whole process and say, well, I'd like to put the road here, and that's your right. But we don't want to be the ones to initiate that. You have that right. I don't believe we do.
Well, I appreciate coming. I didn't know the way of thinking of the new commission and what might have been happening with the lines that were drawn before that we talked about. I could see out to the north of us, for example, you know, if that area were to develop, that you know, maybe that would be, for our area, considered an arterial road. And so that was my thinking in saying, if it is to help other people, that they
the road could go for the people who want it out there and not. So anyway,
Well,
Thank you.
now you know what we're thinking.
oh, hi, Angela Rohr. Kind of coming off of Susan's testimony and having seen some of that area that she showed me a long time ago, it would seem that within a road plan for a property particularly that size, not knowing what they might do in the future, that having more than one access, like the little road she was talking about, if it's not on a master road plan, then it could arbitrarily just not be there, say 15 years from now when they do want to develop. Maybe the western part is supposed to be stuff closer to another street. And so I'm concerned about property being landlocked, undeveloped property being landlocked at this point. And hopefully you're taking that into consideration in this.
Alan Roberts. I'm confused. It was a year ago when the Planning Commission was given the charge to review the master road plan, make any changes that it might need, or maybe it didn't need any. But that was the charge they were given. We're sitting here in a public hearing that's posted as terminating the master road plan. And as Bob Nicholson mentioned, state law says you're going to have a transportation part of your general plan. The extent of that is up to each municipality. It leads me to think that either the Planning Commission really doesn't understand what is required of them for a master road plan, or B, they have personal issues with any type of a road plan, or C, they're just willful and wanton negligence on wanting to deal with the master road plan. I'd like to stick with A and think that they just don't quite understand what their purpose is, but I'm a little bit confused on that also because we've employed Bob Nicholson, the town has employed Bob Nicholson, very professional individual on helping to go through this master road plan. Sunrise Engineering with Russ Funk and Rick, can't think of his last name. Snyder. Two other individuals that have been engaged with the Planning Commission dealing with the master road plan. I don't know how many people have read the actual master road ordinance. It's a pretty good document. What really lacks is an up-to-date map that has some good findings or basis as to why a road is proposed in an area. I think it's important to keep in mind both town officials and the public. Towns generally don't build roads. Usually it's when somebody wants to develop properties. That's who's going to build roads, for the most part. And I think it's important to educate the citizens that a line on that map, if it has good basis behind it, one that's just arbitrarily drawn, has no basis at all. But if you have specific places, because of the geography of the area, where you have to maintain circulation or continuity, then they have good basis as to why a road would make sense in those areas. I definitely am very displeased at the number of times it's been brought up about eminent domain from town officials. The town has no intent to eminent domain anything. There again, It has the ability to do so. But it would require a good basis and a good fact-finding, a reason for that. Developers don't come in here and tell a town what to do or a municipality. Or if they do, then you ought to get out of the business of being a municipality. I would like to see this planning commission get back to what the task that was given to them. Review the master road plan and make changes that make sense. Develop a map that has good basis and finding, and be done with it. But help the public understand, hey, if a proposed road for the future circulation comes across your property, it's only going to be there if you decide to do something with your property, to develop it. And if you read the language in the master road ordinance itself, you will see that that is exactly what is stated.
Alan,
Yes.
I'd like to respond to that. I understand that the town doesn't want to, or would not like to use eminent domain. But what you don't understand is that any person, any developer, anyone has the right to use eminent domain.
That's a false statement.
That's not a false statement. I've talked to a couple of attorneys, and they both said the same thing. It's a right that every citizen of this country has, and you can't take that right away from anyone. And so a developer can come in and say, oh, you've got a proposed line on this one, on this map across Susan's property, and I want to I'll build a road here to get to my property, to loop it around or whatever. And we don't feel that that's sound government. You know, or at least I don't feel that. So, you know, I do understand what you're saying and why you're saying it. It's just that we have two different philosophies. And so I don't agree with what you're saying.
Peter, I've never heard the idea that private individuals.
Yes, you have. I told you before you went to Boston.
Well, yeah, I've heard you say that. but
Did you speak to an attorney?
No, I haven't, but we do need to get a legal interpretation, because I think that's critical. Because, you know, you're saying something I have never heard in 30 years of city planning, that a private individual can somehow eminent domain his neighbor. I don't think that's the case. But we gotta find that out.
He can eminent domain land and prove that it benefits the town or the municipality.
I think those eminent domain powers are reserved strictly to local government. Well, we ought to find that out, because that's critical. So we could get an interpretation from East Snow or anybody else, the county attorney or whoever you rely on. But, you know, it's interesting, the discussion is kind of like, you know, the concern by the planning commission or some that the road plan tramples on private property rights, there's gonna be dictatorial. But in reality, I think a properly done master road plan, it preserves opportunities, it preserves access, it forms a coordinating plan, and you've got 100 property owners out there wanting to figure out how they're gonna get access. They're looking for leadership, okay, they're looking for somebody to kind of help coordinate efforts, and that's the purpose of a master road plan. And again, it's primarily focuses on the major roads, the freeway, the arterials, the major collectors. Not gonna worry about your local subdivision street, you know, that goes into a particular subdivision. Obviously, the developer will bring forth plans and they subdivide it, but, you know, I think you have to look at a master road plan as a tool of efficiency over the long term when the town develops. And that's, you know, I think the wisdom when the legislature said it's required, and it's required focusing on these major streets. Now, you know, again, the scope of how grand or small it is up to you, ultimately up to the town council, but you need to have something.
Thank you. And also, I'd like the public to know that Bob was not here when we had discussed this, so in all intents and purposes of, thinking that Bob had anything to do with this, I would not put that on the record because he was in Boston when we decided to do this, and we did not confer with you, so we didn't have that knowledge beforehand. Yes.
I have to see if I can keep my thoughts together here. We did have a threat of eminent domain from a previous city council for this piece of property that I'm talking about. And so that's why, and it's not our intent to leave landlocked, leave property landlocked, which is our reason for saying, just put it on the other side of the fence for those people, because this is what towns run into, and it's difficult, I think, is that you have somebody who owns a big piece of property, and they have, they can provide access, but instead of doing that, they divide up the property so that it is landlocked. And then we've had numerous people who bought these little pieces of property, they're landlocked, they come to our house and say, may we walk across your property to see what we bought? And I say, you may, but do you have an access to it? And they say, well, we were told that the road would be coming in across your property. So towns are left dealing with that. And while we don't want to leave those people landlocked, and it's not their fault that the previous owners didn't provide an access like they should have, and the same on the top of the hill up here. We're looking at that map and saying there is a place to give them access, but instead of being on our side of the fence or through the middle of our property, it could be on their side. If it goes through our property, then our it is an agriculture protection zone right now, then it's going to be very difficult for us to manage having people go out through our fields and out, that's where that road would go. I've forgotten if there was something else I was going to say about that. I wanted to mention the eminent domain and the issue of being landlocked. I guess the other thing is that we submitted, and I can resubmit this, at the time that the eminent domain issue came up with the previous council, that we submitted a letter that should be on file that saying that we would provide an emergency access. The access at the end of Wonder Lane, where the frontage road does not connect on the other end, is 500 feet wide and about, I shouldn't say how deep, I've measured it before I talked with Sunrise Engineering and so on. And so that's a tremendous bridge to be built across there. And I say bridge because we've had the grapevine washes and major drainage, and we've had floods down there that filled that. That's an old gravel pit that was taken out for the building of the freeway. It's narrow on the east side, but on the west side it opens way up. And that's been a lake before when the floods have come down. And if you go out and look at where it goes under the freeway, you see that there are the mud line is along the top of that, of the tunnel under there, so it fills that. So it's a major drainage, and so we just said, probably the town can't afford to put a bridge across there. We'll provide an emergency access, and there are a number of places in my sister's neighborhood in South Jordan where they've done that, where they have bump gates or a lock on the gate, so if they need access, they can get through, but it isn't a continuous flow of traffic through there.
Thank you. Yes.
Paul Inslee. I think that most of the people in town recognize that the planning commission in place now is not the planning commission that was in place last year. And I think that most of the people in town also recognize that the group on the planning commission now, many have different perspectives than some of the members of the planning commission in the past, or commissions in the past. So I just wanted to let the public, I think they do recognize that this isn't the planning commission that was requested, as Mayor Roberts indicated, to
comply with their request. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you.
I have my everything.
Okay.
Can I just say it from here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, just thinking about arterial roads, you know, I can see the importance of that. And my family's neighborhood up in South Jordan, they live on 104th South. And when they moved there, it was all wheat fields between there and the Oker Mountains. And no dream of all the development that's come in since then. And so they did not have, apparently UDOT did not have a major route design through there. And when all the development went in at Harriman and all those other places out there, then they came along 104 South and took out all the homes on one side. So there needed to have been a plan for all of that land that was out there. So I can see that. We were just, in our family, with the things I've been saying, we've just been trying to think through that. How to make it happen that's the best for everybody.
Thank you. All right, if there's no other public comment, I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing on the master road plan. You want to keep it open?
No, if there's no other public comment, yeah, let's go ahead, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's move on to action items.
Can we discuss that?
Oh,
I want to know where we're at.
I
What we're
think we
doing.
can discuss it on our action items too, if you'd like, or we can discuss it. Let's
I
go,
just don't know why we don't discuss it right after we do it. Let's do it.
well, it's mainly because of rules that are made not by me.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and do our action item on chapter 23 of the land use ordinance mixed use zone development. Do that. All right, so at the moment, we had our public hearing, and we have public comments. We can discuss, what action we'd like to take at this particular time. So if you can,
Well, I kind of have to go with the buildable acres if it's not anywhere else, why do we have it here? I mean, if we're just that type thing, that's what this whole thing's all about, why do we have it here? Anything else?
Just being very specific.
Why?
So nobody can go back and say they don't interpret it, you know, they interpret it a different way.
So if I buy 40 acres, I want to put 2 houses on it, I'm like a half acre of buildable property, I can't build on it?
no, you can't have a mixed use
You can't.
zone.
Well, I know, but if I was, I'm talking on the regular zoning.
If you have 40.
If I've got 40 acres, I've got a half acre that's actually buildable, what stops me from building on it?
The zone,
Whatever
if,
your zone is.
if it's zoned, what is it, I think R20,
Right.
you know, that's a half an acre
Yeah.
building, that's a half acre, right?
Right.
But you have 40 acres and you know, well, no, Danielle, what's the building? Well, it depends on the zoning.
The
Right.
zone.
No, it depends on the zoning.
But
Right.
there,
I mean, we have that issue before us.
The dog people.
The 26 acres up there.
Yes, the 26 acres, yeah, what she said.
and
But that's a hill ordinance
Bob
that
explained
affects that.
when we were talking with this, and it was also because of that particular, there, it has to be buildable. In which zone was that, the 26 acres, what was their zoning, that it has to be buildable acreage? And that, and we took it from his language. because-
I'm trying to think, was it 26 acres south of town?
Right,
Yeah.
Just as you get on
Big
the freeway.
hillside.
Well,
One in 3 lots.
I guess when you take
Yeah.
buildable would be the gross acres minus property that's, you know, restricted under the hillside ordinance or within a floodplain. And I guess I probably did throw out that term buildable and you could keep it here. I guess the idea is that a mixed-use zone is kind of a different creature to start with. And that's why I think a minimum acreage makes sense. Okay, it is a totally different than an R1
Right.
10 or an R1 or an acre lot or something.
Right.
And so that's why you have some different standards, the opportunity perhaps to do some different street designs and all that, because it is different than a typical conventional subdivision. The idea behind 40 buildable acres is if somebody's got property that, 40, you got 40 acres, but 37 is really on a steep hillside,
Right.
is that an appropriate mixed-use zone? When really the net buildable might be 3. So, I personally am comfortable with the idea of 40 buildable acres. Again, you have to know the buildable means minus whatever's in the hillside, if it's outside of a floodplain or floodway.
So is there
And
somewhere
then you-
that
but I don't-
describes buildable? I
Well,
mean, is that in the?
It's in the ordinances,
I
yeah.
don't know if it's actually in the ordinance or not. in the
Well, like
definition, but
hillside
we could-
ordinance, there's
Yeah,
quite a few
we
different.
could define it in this ordinance. Buildable means the gross acre minus land restricted
Yeah,
on
so
the
that's, I guess.
hillside. It would be gross acreage minus property within the hillside restrictions and within a 100-year floodplain.
And wetlands, and
Oh, yeah.
there's
And
wetlands,
wetlands.
there's also, there's,
Yeah, there's a lot of.
there's
There's some
tons of
language
ordinances, so
But the
buildable is in our other ordinances.
Right,
And so this isn't the very first ordinance that ever has buildable in it.
right.
It's just that he recommended that we come up with some type of buildable, because we were just dealing with that gentleman that had a certain amount of buildable acres. And if we put 40 buildable acres, nobody has any question in it. And it doesn't make it so that they can't build on it. It
Right.
says that this is the part of the ordinance that says buildable, but every other ordinance that they go through, including the hillside, the wetlands, it's gonna state, it's just a secondary part of saying buildable. Because it is in all the other ordinances.
So, here against my stupidity, so the mixed use zone ordinance picks up on all that hillside stuff, everything like that, it's not all built inside this one ordinance.
No, no,
Well, the hillside ordinance would apply
to all,
anything within the town. Right, within the town, just as your floodplain or ordinances,
Wetlands or your-
wetlands.
Because I guess who's gonna determine what's buildable or not?
well,
And
the
also,
ordinances do.
Yeah.
also, one thing that was brought up during that time is if, on that property there, he's got, say, 5 acres here,
Right.
and then nothing here, but he's got another 5 down here.
Oh, I know, that's,
Is that gonna be the buildable? You got-
Right.
They're split
right.
by a hillside ordinance or something like that. So how do you deal with that? You know, I mean, that was one of his
Right.
questions, was the 2 acre, had to be a 2 acre lot.
Right.
They didn't want 1 acre here and then one down
Two
below.
acres continue, I mean,
Contiguous.
Continuous.
yeah, that word, I can't say that.
But this kind of scares me with my, I don't know what it is, 6 or 7 acres down in Arizona. I think it's about 12 miles north of Nogales. It's probably a 10th city for illegals now, but I haven't been down there in a while. But the reason that the land, that there was 5 acres or so, because they had to be that much so that there was one buildable lot on that, but,
Right.
Okay.
Buildable could be taken out of there, but what you do instead is you raise your 40 acres
Your
Right.
minimum.
and your minimum. I mean, you guys
Right.
originally were taught last year, you were talking about 200 acres.
Right.
Or 100 acres
Well,
or 200
there's
acres.
200
You were talking a larger amount.
Yeah.
My feeling was, it still allows someone to do mixed use
Right.
with, I mean, it doesn't make it so out of reach, that it only allows, a multimillionaire to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said before, 40 is still, I mean, if it could be $4 million for that property. So that's still, a good chunk, but it's not 5 acres,
Right.
and mixed use. So.
We were taking taking the buildable mainly because of what we had discussed with him, and also because we wanted to lower it from 200. He recommended 80, we felt 40 buildable. That way you don't have a 40-acre mountain with 1 acre of mixed use up on top with everything around it. It just, to me, it makes it so that nobody has a question that we would like 40 buildable acres for our mixed use, so it's not so confined to one small area, so.
Question, is there a formula you go through to get to the buildable acres?
It's all.
Well, I
for the
think, and we
ordinance.
can include it in this mixed use or in the general definitions, but here's a sample definition. Buildable acres equals gross acres minus land deemed not buildable due to hillside ordinance restrictions, wetland restrictions, or similar environmental restrictions.
Is that already in our ordinances?
No, I just put that, I don't have.
You just wrote that off the top of your head? You're
Pretty
good.
good.
You're good.
I don't have the Leeds ordinance memorized, so if we have a definition, it may be, but I'm not aware of it. What definitions?
Thanks, Susan.
The the only definitions I tend to say,
That's probably not up to, that's probably definitely not up to date.
I
So I
don't,
don't see a definition for buildable acres, it's not under these. So I'm not-
So could we add that, how would we add that into the definitions?
Well, we could add it, within the mixed use section itself, since you were amending that, we reference it there, buildable acres, and then, we could add it to that sentence, buildable means the following. Or we could add it, at the same time, add it to the definitions section of the ordinance. Right now, it's where we're just taking care of chapter 23, I just add to that first sentence. Parcel size must exceed 40 buildable acres, and then second sentence will define what that is.
I think that'd be better, because it kind of leaves you to think that somebody's gonna try and decide what that buildable acreage is, you're gonna have to anyway.
right.
That's putting a lot of burden on
I don't-
us
I don't
or
think-
the landowner.
I don't have any problem putting that definition in. I think that's a great idea.
We don't define it. Yeah.
Nope, you're fine. All right, so at this point, do we have a motion on our chapter 23, the land use ordinance, mixed use zone development?
Any further conversation?
Any further conversation?
Now, this motion, is this to pass it on to the council?
Correct.
Is it just a matter?
Either way.
That we're done with it.
If it passes, it goes to the council. I believe if it's denied, if it doesn't pass, it still goes to the council. I believe that's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
Either way. The only way it doesn't go to the council after this is if we table it.
Is there anything we want to go back and look at again?
We want to add the definition.
Well, I know the definition here. What about the last two paragraphs?
They're wrong. If that's what everyone wants to do.
And the town council will strike these off.
Well, the town council is the final authority, they get to
Add it or subtract it?
accept it or.
I mean, it does not like this,
Yes.
it's
Just the way it,
so
just the
they
way
can
it
see
is.
that, yeah, we're gonna.
Mhm.
Well, I'll make a motion if everyone is okay with it. I'll motion to approve our changes to the mixed-use ordinance. The number one, the parcel size must exceed 40 buildable acres, and no more than 25% of the parcel may be utilized for mixed use. And after that, the definition, would you recite what you said?
Okay. Buildable acres means the gross acres minus land deemed not buildable due to hillside ordinance restrictions, wetland restrictions, or similar environmental restrictions.
Yeah, I'd like that as the definition for
I-
buildable.
I got buildable means the gross acres, and can you continue?
Gross acres minus land deemed not buildable due to hillside ordinance restrictions, wetland restrictions, or similar environmental restrictions.
And you can, everybody have that?
We'll have it as well, just up in
And an elimination of 23.10, paragraph 23.10, and the elimination of 23.11.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. I'd also like to make a gentleman's, or gentleman, I guess, motion to make sure that Leeds' sense of place is no longer capitalized,
Oh, okay,
the sense of place.
okay.
All right, so I have a motion on the table. Bob, would you like to repeat that for us? The motion.
On the motion,
Yes, please.
have a motion to approve, with the exception of section 1, which includes the definition of buildable acres, which means which is gross acres minus land deemed not buildable due to hillside and restricting wetlands or similar environmental restrictions, and elimination of 2310 and 2311.
And also making Leeds' sense of place lowercase.
Where are you at?
It's on page 23.4.
Number 2,
It's
yeah.
It's
2F, the very end of the sentence.
right here, this sense of place would just be small.
Okay.
All right, so I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carried, and so that action item will be taken to the Leeds Town Council for this next, let's see, what's this, the 10th of April. All right, we'll continue on to action item B, discussion and possible action regarding master road plan.
One thing Daniel Lewis
Yes.
mentioned, it will go to the town council the next meeting, but actually we have to, the town council has to have a public hearing on it, and we have to give it 10 days notice.
Oh,
Well, it'll go as discussion.
Is that true? The town council has to have a public hearing? Because we've
Yes.
already had the public hearing.
I know, but the town council, unless, and maybe Alan or Mayor Rourke, the state law says, you know, a town can designate who's gonna be the land use authority. In most cases, that turns out to be the council. They are the land use authority, and they have the final authority, and you are a recommending body.
Right.
So as long as you're a recommending body, then the ordinance says that the legislative body.
They get to review this, and they get to change it,
Right,
and vote on it appropriately.
yeah.
I don't think they need I don't think they need a public hearing.
Well, they
It's-
do unless
it's-
they delegated you as the
I mean,
land use authority. But the state law says that the legislative body which is the council, or land use authority, which is normally the council, it has a public hearing. I mean, that's just the state code. I mean, I don't know
Well,
the
they've never,
history.
I don't believe they've done that in the past, but they've allowed public comment, you know, at the town council level, for almost everything that anyone has a comment on. I mean, they've been,
So are we
they've been
required
made.
to have a public hearing if we're not the land use authority?
Well, on that I'll have to check. In St. George, we have a public hearing vote now. I'd have to check with the state code, double check with Heath, to see if, but the final decision maker, which is normally the council,
It is.
would have the public hearing.
We need to find that out, because these aren't cheap. Just because we pass it on to them, to me, it would be pass it on as a discussion item for them before they go into a action item or a public hearing. I don't think you want to get into that so fast.
Well, it'd be a discussion item, it wouldn't be, it would, you know. It wouldn't-
They don't need
It wouldn't be an action item for the town council unless they so choose. I mean, unless they put it on an action item. It'd be more of a discussion item and then they could evaluate it and at their convenience, should make the changes and.
Well, is the public hearing, is it rushing things?
You mean for them?
Yeah.
They'll have to
They'll
decide
have
if
to
they
do
want the
that. We
public hearing,
can't,
not
we're not
us.
telling
Well,
them.
I understand that.
We're not telling them
I
they have to have a
understand
public
that,
hearing.
but,
I guess what it does, and to me, I think I have it, it just gives the public another time. Yeah, it's a headache for us to go through it, and then for them to go through it, but it gives the public another time to think about it. I mean, maybe some will come back and say, well, I thought about that, and I think that's just, excuse the French, but asinine.
But like I said,
I'm looking
the
back,
town-
you know.
But like I said, the town council has always allowed people to speak on a discussion item like
Yeah.
this, you know, and
But either way, it's their
it's up to
baby,
them
so-
whether they wanna do,
So we could discuss this to the cows come home, and it wouldn't matter. On
it's in their ballpark.
the- Right.
They can do what they want.
And I'll double check with Heath on
If we're not the land use authority, we may not have to have these public hearings.
that's possible, that's, you know.
And that
But
would
still,
save quite a bit of money.
That'll be a change, because it hasn't been that way since I've lived in this town.
Well, that kind of advertises what you're doing over and above the 24-hour notice that these are put out.
Right.
Yeah, that's,
People are looking at the paper
Yeah.
like that.
I guess my bottom line is if we are not the land use authority and we are not required to do the public hearings, all we would be doing is giving our recommendation, and it would be up to them to do the 10 days notice, and it would save a
Public hearing.
tremendous amount of money for the town, because if it's
But-
not warranted, there's no need to do it.
Yeah, you may choose.
but then again, we're not, unless somebody's really watching, we're not giving the public a chance to come and tell us what they want.
Well, that's what they would be doing, because that's what he's saying, is
You know,
inevitably.
why give it to the town council after we've done all this stuff?
Well,
then-
they're gonna
then the
get to
citizens-
do it
then the
anyway.
citi- But then the citizens change everything we do. They go to town council and say, well, we didn't get the input of the planning commission, so
Yeah, I
this
see
is
your
what I
point.
think's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and
I
the
see
cost
your point.
is,
I mean-
you know, is putting a notice in the paper one time.
Yeah, to
Mhm.
me,
It's a
I don't,
one-time
I mean,
shot.
unless we're having to pay somebody to come and show up, I don't think the cost is that astronomical, that we shouldn't have a vote.
How much does it cost for, do you know,
It's about $140.
for each public hearing? So if we, well, either way, we'll figure out what we need to do.
Let me check with you.
Okay, so we already did our mixed use zone development, and it will go to discussion item for the town council, and we'll continue on discussion and possible action regarding master road plan. At this point, it sounds like we need to continue with the master road plan, and
I don't know if I completely agree with where you might be going, but I'll reserve that and listen to what you're thinking.
I understand that there's a lot of people that believe that an existing road plan is not the same as a master road plan. But,
Is it all in the same?
well, some people think differently.
Well,
So-
existing is existing, and master is what we want in the future.
Right.
So it is two different things.
Right. So, at this point,
Bob, when Bob read the state law, if you recall the very end of it, about the planning commission has the right to recommend the way it should be.
okay,
So, in my opinion, I think we could say that that's our master road plan and not draw any lines on there across private property. That's my opinion. We could still go with that and say that's our master road plan. We refuse, or however we wanna word it, we refuse to put fictitious roads across people's property. You know, to be honest, you know, the master road plan is trying to solve problems that shouldn't exist in the first place, and at the expense of landowners in town. So, you know, I think, you know, we try to do it right the first time, you know, when, let's say Susan comes and says, you know, the Savage family wants to have a development where, you know, where there might be, there might be a road up across her property, whether your family says they wanna put, you know, secondary roads in, or side streets in, because you wanna put, you know, 500 homes up or something. I mean, I still think that's, in my opinion, that's the landowners. That's the landowner's right. And for us to draw them in across private property, I still don't agree with that.
If the state was to make an arterial highway, they're gonna make their line across, but I'm saying.
They're gonna eminent domain, they're gonna say, this is gonna benefit southern Utah. So this is gonna benefit 150,000 people. And,
Well, that's not what I'm getting at, one good thing about not having it, lines drawn on a map, that somebody could come in and say, oh yeah, that's a piece of property I wanna buy, it looks like there is gonna be a road. Or the realtor comes in and says, see, there's a road to that property, so you're not gonna be landlocked. I don't wanna give,
so you're creating a problem.
yeah, I don't wanna give any,
False pretense.
False pretense, yeah.
of that. However, I can also say where on your, what you had mentioned, you wanna have a plan of some sort. If you could call it a proposed road plan or
That's all
something.
it is.
That's
It shows
already
general,
happened.
general location. And if Leeds for the next 50, 100 years probably isn't gonna develop at all, you know, I mean, like Rockville, they issue one permit every 2 or 3 years. And so they don't. But like Susan said, you know, you get into situations where towns do develop, if you haven't got the capacity in a roadway, and nobody's given it any forethought, then you end up with a lot of inefficiencies where at some point you have to come in and buy up houses to widen the road. And then they start thinking, well, how come somebody didn't think of this? How come, you know, how come we're tearing down houses to build roads? Wasn't anybody smart enough to think that, you know, something was gonna happen? And so, you know, you're kind of preserving opportunities, I don't see it as trampling on rights and property rights and private property rights. I think it's preserving opportunity, it's fulfilling the local government's role of leadership to come up with, how's this all gonna work? You know, otherwise you just let, oh, you guys, everybody out there, you just figure it out on your own. We got 1,000 people here, hey, just go for it, you know, we're not gonna be involved. because we don't wanna hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah, but when they come to you, when they come to you as you know, and propose a development, you can deal with it at that point.
Well,
You know, and you can say,
Yes,
you can say,
yeah,
you know,
sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
this is what's gonna benefit, you know.
So do you make the developer go down the street and widen everything and buy property?
Well,
Do you do
if
that?
Grapevine Wash was
I'm not
gonna,
talking about Grapevine, let's say we're talking about this side of the road.
well, if Grapevine was going to do their thing,
Uh-huh.
Main Street would have had to been, one of the proposals, where Main Street was
That was
gonna
the
have to be
proposal,
changed,
right.
okay?
Or the
But who
intersection.
was gonna pay for that? Grapevine Wash was gonna have to pay for that,
Okay.
okay? So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, the controversy happened, that the controversy happened, because they said, they can get they can get 100 homes in there, but they couldn't put any more homes in there because Main Street had to be changed. And
Well, that's
so,
not quite how it was.
well, it was something like that. And, I don't know if it was specifically
That was
that,
even
but,
close.
the cost at the time, when, if they wanted to develop more than the allotted
Right,
houses, that there had to be changes in the road
right.
to compensate for
Either
that.
Main Street or the interchange.
Yeah, either the interchange or Main Street or, and, they would be responsible for that.
Right.
And no matter how you look at it, they would still be responsible for that.
Part of the issue is that, a two-lane road, a small little local rural road isn't gonna be enough in all locations.
Right.
Someplace, you're gonna have to have roads with a little more capacity. Well, who's gonna make that decision? That's, local government would normally make that. They put a little forethought to it, say, we've got 1,000 or 10,000 acres in a given area that's likely to develop over the next 50 years. That's gonna require a certain amount of road capacity. Now, individual property owners, obviously, they wanna minimize their expense, they only wanna put in a two-lane road, but somewhere, somebody's gonna have to give some forethought and say, hey, in this road, we're gonna need a four-lane road. So that's part of the efficiency of thinking of the future.
I think as bad as some of the public, and there's not too many that against it, as bad as they disagree with this master road plan. Oh, there's an end. I think we need one. I think we need to show whoever, whether it be a realtor, whether it be Joe Blow that's gonna develop back over here, this is what we wanna get you from point A to point B. It needs to be, otherwise, later on down the road, they're gonna come to us and say, you're a bunch of, how come you didn't have this planned out? How come you don't have something for us to work with? I mean, if you wanna stay quote up Leeds, that's fine. I'm not getting no building permits or subdivisions, but you gotta plan for that. That's what we're here for. We're not here to say, we're not gonna hurt your feelings, we're not gonna go through your property. But by God, we're gonna do away with it.
Well, so where does,
Back east, Bill.
We're not back
For
east.
years, back east, a cul-de-sac road, a road without a loop in it or without, was only allowed to be 1,800 feet long, period. We have roads in town that are dead ends, that are miles long.
Here. Exactly.
Now, you wanna fix that, you wanna draw a line across Susan Savage's property, and someone go to Susan and
I'm not saying
take
driving
that?
across the
I mean,
property.
I'm just using that as an example, I'm
Okay.
not really,
Right.
but, I have a problem, I have a real problem with that.
Why did you? I've had property that highways have gone through, streets have gone through. I've had to move 17 million times growing up because of agricultural in my background. Because somebody didn't have the foresight to say, hey, we're gonna put a 4-lane road in here, so your house is gonna be taken out the front door.
I look at it as protecting property rights.
There's gotta be a way we can be a little,
Yeah.
we've got to.
We need a plan.
Because to protect Susan's property rights, we're saying to hell with the guy across the way.
No, we're not saying that at all.
We're not giving him a plan to where we plan on getting.
We're gonna,
right
you're gonna
roads.
you're gonna let someone develop property and make Susan pay for that.
How would Susan pay for it?
She would lose
She's
her
gonna lose her
property.
property.
No, well,
No,
she
I'm
can't
not.
lose, the state, the US Constitution says public property cannot be taken without just compensation. Private property, they cannot pay for.
I understand
So,
that, I
yeah.
understand that.
So I don't know.
You know,
what
but if Susan doesn't wanna sell it,
No, I'm not,
she's gonna be forced to sell it.
only,
And that's,
So I guess-
that's my issue.
so I guess what you're saying is, so instead of putting any roads anywhere, for anybody outside what we got right now, we're not gonna do anything.
It still can be done.
Yeah, but you're gonna have,
How?
you're gonna have a mishmash of roads and every which
The
way.
developer can come and say, you know, I need to have a road here. And I can, well, Susan doesn't wanna sell it, but, you know, you get back to the issue of eminent domain. You know,
And he can prove it whether we've got a road
he
there or
can
not.
say, look, I'm building, and I'll tell you why. I'm gonna put in 500 homes.
Okay.
That's gonna create, that's the tax base, those 500 homes are gonna deliver to the town. He can go and say, this is the amount of money that the town is gonna get from the property property taxes. And they're gonna justify and say, yeah, okay, you can take that property. You know, with fair and just compensation. But Susan doesn't have any right to say no. The Sterlings don't have any right to say no. And there's a fine line. There's a fine line for a developer to make a whole bunch of money on this thing. I mean, when the state comes in and they wanna put a highway in, the state's not,
You wanna go there with me, because the state took one of my property at like a finger, and I got squat.
so you didn't
Exactly,
get
so
fair
you
and
didn't get
just
fair market.
compensation.
My neighbor had to move his house, so, and he got pretty good. I mean, actually, they didn't take my property, they took my fence down, and they backed up it. But we're not dealing with a 300-foot right-of-way. And we're,
Or not?
well, I don't know how much right-of-way a road is. I mean, we're not putting freeways up.
How wide is a 4-lane road?
a 4-lane road is typically around 80 foot right of way. I mean, the pavement would be in 60-something, 62 or 65, but the right of way, when you include curb gutter sidewalk.
But I think we as a commission, unless the town council wants to say, I think we as a commission are commissioned to have a master road plan for the town. That's our job. If it hurts somebody's feelings, I mean, I had my feelings hurt before. So,
Anybody coming in wanting to build something, they're gonna have to negotiate all this, show it your
they're gonna have to either way.
access and whatever,
Right.
you know, have you acquired this or that?
Yeah. They're gonna have to either way, and it doesn't matter if the road's on a map or not. If somebody on the other side of Susan's house wants to build 500 houses, they want to eminent domainer, you can do it without a road there.
That's right, that's what I'm saying. The road doesn't
So,
have, the
why
road
does it
on the
matter?
map doesn't
Why-
have to be there.
Again, I think it just coordinates a myriad.
Exactly, I
Right,
think it
that-
makes the town look like it knows what it's doing instead of putting a bunch of roads out there that go nowhere, which they already do.
They already do
Yeah.
that, and unfortunately, I think,
And we can connect them all
Well, we probably can't.
to make it look all nice and pretty, but.
No, we can't, because it's too late to do that.
well, I think the bottom line with the master road plan is that we either need to add some verbiage that under no circumstances are these proposed, we need to come up with a different word than proposed, because Unfortunately, that didn't work last time. Proposed became written in stone.
Right. I agree.
And
There's gotta be something put there to protect somebody, but in the end of it, if somebody wants to do eminent domain, they can do it whether we propose it or not.
right, but on the other hand, I believe that if we are required to have a master road plan, I don't believe we have to have it as extensive as it is right now with roads that are put in places that literally can't be put, just
Well, I
because they
agree.
wanted to be,
I
you know,
agree with that.
A to B.
Agree with them.
And I believe this is like probably the second time that Sunrise Engineering in the last commission had a powwow where everybody came and marked up the map and nothing came from it. But the bottom line with this master road plan is there are scenarios with the roads that are not going to work and will not work.
Oh, I agree.
And if we're going to do something, if we can't get rid of the master road plan and the council's not going to listen to that because of ordinances and rules by the state, then I believe we need to step back to square one. And like originally with this map, we erased everything. And I would personally like to not see any roads on there because sooner or later they will come back to bite the people that are actually paying the mortgage on it. And yes, that is personal. I know that someone from the audience said this was a personal, it is personal because I'm the one that has to pay the mortgage on this land, and I was the one that for an entire year had to fight every other week to come and fight for my own land that I don't think someone should have to do that. I don't think somebody should have to be put through, especially when, if we're talking about rules and ordinances, there should be something first and foremost to protect the landowner versus putting a proposed road that was used against quite a few people in this town, not just my family, not just the trust that owns this particular land. And that's where I think this needs to start. I don't think that we should start with what the existing master road plan is, which is roads just thrown on. I think what we need to do is have areas, not necessarily even master roads created on them. I think we just need to have areas that say, this may be a future proposed roadway, but not any particular line. Now, is that adequate enough to do? Can you have bubbles on there that says this would be a proposed area that could create this, but not necessarily master roads where everybody takes that proposed road and turns it into, well, the town already agreed to it and it's going in.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of flexibility on how you show that. I think let's form tomorrow, they just have points A and B, there'll be a road connecting A and B somewhere. You could draw a wide swath, but in this corridor, somewhere there'll be a road. And again, I think your focus is on the major road. You're not worried about more minor streets, you know, however little subdivision or however
Well, so if you
however
guys
many
look,
acres gonna be served.
if you look at this map, I can really only see, what other major corridor can you possibly see in this area except for this area here? That's the only road that we don't have. This connects to here, this connects to here. Really, what other major road do you see that we need, that we would have to, if he's talking about subdivisions, this is a subdivision, this is a subdivision, this is a subdivision, that we don't have to put a road through. The only major subdivision we would really need is to have somewhere over here somehow to get on and off the freeway here and to access this area that isn't accessed, because all of this is Red Cliff Desert Tortoise Reserve, that at this point, with wetlands, with the ordinances from the state, we can't go across Red Cliff Desert Tortoise Reserve anyway. So, in my opinion, I believe we should put something right here that has and it would be on the Leeds, or where the Leeds actually annexed in, maybe right here, an access point to this area over here, and that would be the only other master road plan that I would do, because nothing else we can actually coordinate, because it's on county land, it's on Red Cliffs Desert Tortoise land, Red Cliffs Desert Tortoise land, and at this point, this isn't even our area that we can, it's not even annexed into our
So,
town.
help me out on this. can we not put a proposed road through county property?
You can't. If it's, and we just did this in St. George in the Tonquin area where Green Valley someday is gonna hook up Tonquin, it's crossing county area, so, the state law says towns have some extraterritorial jurisdiction, particularly within your declared growth area. And so, you can show some general linkages.
Do we have an extended road?
I look at this
You're talking about the western corner,
from a
Bob?
different angle.
Well, that'd be an example, yeah, western
If
quarter would
something
be an
happens
example.
right here, per se, say if we get a fire coming up through here, where are these people gonna go? They're gonna go right back to the fire?
This is a
That's
completely.
one road.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It goes all the way to St. George.
Can when these people get to that road?
Absolutely, absolutely they can. This road is a major corridor. In fact, this is what the corridor that goes up through Oak Grove is one of those that the state has thought about connecting all of what is that, No, the main corridor.
Turtle Road.
This is a major collector. We can count this as one of our major collector roads. This is an ingress egress road.
So we get freeway, so to get public safety people in here, if this is cut off, I better go through St. George and
Wouldn't you have to go to St. George anyway?
well, not if I propose a road that we put in somewhere here, or somewhere down the line, down the road. Yeah, right now I do,
Right,
but later on I don't want it, because this is gonna grow. It's not
Okay.
gonna get smaller.
right. In this area right here that's
Same
county,
thing.
this is not our, we don't have to actually, we don't have, on a master road plan,
No,
we
we
are
don't have to worry
not,
about that.
we're not putting master roads in for county developments, right?
You don't have to, but you have the discretion. I mean, like I say, you can show in an area that is projected to be your growth area, the town's growth area, you can show some connections if that's what's required.
Okay, so at this point, everything here has an ingress egress through here. This area here, Susan said that she wanted it over on this side, if
Right.
at all.
See, and the only way you can actually hook it because of all these here, is go straight down this road, go across there, this property line, and come back.
Well,
No, I
that's
don't know.
if it's not through wetlands, if it's
Right,
not through
right.
hillside.
I mean, you're
So
right.
that's what I'm saying, is why put a road, why put something through there if you know,
I'm not saying put it there, I'm saying we need to look at some way to get some access to this property, other than going through St. George and back.
right?
I mean, we're stupid if we don't. I mean, pardon that, but
Silver Point Estates,
I don't know where that's at.
Right here.
Okay.
Silver Point Estates, their 105 lot home development is the total size of their development. And they were going to try to put a road going in from down below, where they're gonna put a circle in, and go on Silver Reef, just up the hill on Silver Reef Road. And they're gonna put their development in, and the road was gonna go around, because that's where all their lots are gonna be, and it was gonna go around and it was gonna hook into the top. Or they were thinking of coming down, where, not Silver Valley, Hidden Valley, coming down near the,
Cemetery?
near the Catholic cemetery.
There, it's just freaking drop off.
No, they
Well,
dug
it's a
out.
drop off only if you go straight down. If you go sideways,
Well, I guess, yeah, I guess-
you eliminate the extreme steepness
Yeah.
and you circle down. I mean, these things were all talked about. Here's a developer working on those issues.
Right.
And
No, I agree.
yeah, I mean, these are all things that are being discussed for that area. And I live there.
Right.
So, yeah, I know how to get out,
Yeah.
and yes, I'm well aware when there's a fire, but I know which way it's going and where it is.
Yeah.
But, and I keep all my neighbors informed, but.
You're not gonna convince me not to have a master growth plan and have something on here to help the public. We've talked till down to the property.
you know,
And it's gonna go both ways. 'cause
Yeah, I'm not gonna,
convinced
I'm
you
not
the
gonna,
other.
I'm not gonna agree to put
Right.
lines on private property. I refuse to agree to that.
no, they're just lines right now. Can a town, could we put on our master road plan, a four-way, like there were, between us and Casa de Oro? Could we put that as a starting point, say, for some roads? I mean, it isn't there. It was one of the proposals. Can we put that in our road plan? That, subject to this, four-way or diamond interchange being built, then that would afford some protect, you know, I mean.
So it'd be a conceptual intersection